02, 47 hours, 14 kilometers southwest of Culiacán, Sinaloa State, Mexico. The desert highway stretched empty under a moonless sky, thermal signatures from the asphalt still radiating into the cool pre-dawn air. Then the lead vehicle and a 9-truck convoy rounded the curve, headlights cutting through the darkness like knife blades. The convoy belonged to the Sinaloa Cartel's elite security apparatus, transporting high-value targets and an estimated 400 kilograms of processed fentanyl destined for Arizona border crossings. Intelligence intercepts had identified the route 72 hours prior. Satellite reconnaissance confirmed departure times. Now, 45 operators from Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Team 6, occupied positions along a 3-kilometer kill zone, invisible in the terrain. The mission designation was Operation Reaper Scythe. The authorization had come directly from JSOC Command at Fort Bragg. Rules of engagement were explicit: total neutralization, 0 survivors who could compromise operational security. At 02:51 hours, the convoy entered the engagement area. 9 vehicles, 4 armored Toyota Land Cruisers, 3 Ford F-350 gun trucks with mounted M2 Brownings, 2 Mercedes cargo vans. Thermal imaging from an MQ-9 Reaper orbiting at 18,000 feet counted 47 heat signatures. The cartel's tactical formations were professional, spacing maintained at 50-meter intervals, gun trucks positioned at front, middle, and rear. These were not amateurs. These were former Mexican Special Forces operatives, trained at Fort Benning under bilateral programs, now selling expertise to the highest bidder. Intelligence indicated the convoy's security chief had served in GAFE before defecting. He understood American tactics. He had prepared his men. He had not prepared them for what waited in the rocks. 02, 53 hours. The lead Land Cruiser passed the first marker, a GPS waypoint logged in every SEAL's navigation system. Team Alpha, positioned on the northern ridge at elevation advantage, acquired thermal locks. Team Bravo held the southern flank, M240 machine guns trained on the kill zone's eastern exit. Team Charlie controlled the rear blocking position, ensuring no escape corridor. Sniper pairs occupied overwatch on elevated positions 800 meters out, SR-25 rifles fitted with thermal scopes and subsonic ammunition. The fire support element had positioned 2 Mk-19 automatic grenade launchers on the western ridge, each weapon loaded with 32 rounds of high-explosive dual-purpose grenades. The Tactical Operations Center, embedded in a concealed position 3 kilometers north, monitored 8 separate video feeds. The mission commander, a senior chief with 17 years in naval special warfare, whispered into the tactical network, "All elements, stand by. Weapons tight until my command." 02 to 54 hours. The convoy maintained speed, 65 kilometers per hour, confident in their strength. The cartel security chief rode in the second vehicle, coordinating via encrypted radio. His men were alert but not alarmed. They had driven this route 14 times in the past 6 months without incident. The Mexican military avoided them. Local police were paid to look away. American enforcement stayed north of the border. This night, those assumptions would be cremated in white phosphorus and high explosive. At 02:56 hours, the trailing Mercedes entered the kill zone's center point. Every vehicle now occupied the engagement area, trapped between geological formations that funneled them into a 400-meter-long corridor with rock walls on both sides. The convoy had become a shooting gallery. The mission commander transmitted a single word: execute. The night disintegrated into violence. 02:56, 04 hours. Team Alpha's sniper pairs fired simultaneously. 4 suppressed shots, barely audible over engine noise. The lead Land Cruiser's driver and front passenger collapsed against the dashboard, subsonic rounds having transited through armored glass and cranial vaults. The vehicle swerved, struck the rock wall, and ground to a halt, blocking the forward route. The convoy compressed immediately, vehicles braking hard, creating the vehicular bunching that tactical doctrine warns against but panic produces. 2 seconds later, the Mk-19 grenade launchers opened fire. The weapon system cycled at 40 rounds per minute, launching 40mm grenades in flat trajectories across the kill zone. The first salvo targeted the gun trucks. High explosive rounds impacted metal, detonating with overpressure waves that ruptured eardrums and liquefied internal organs. The rear gun truck's fuel tank ignited, sending flame 30 feet into the air. The middle gun truck's crew attempted to swing their M2 Browning toward the muzzle flashes, but the second grenade salvo arrived before the barrel completed its traverse. The weapon and its crew disappeared in a fireball that illuminated the entire canyon. 02:56, 22 hours. Cartel fighters spilled from the vehicles, training overriding terror. They returned fire with AK-47 variants and FN SCAR rifles, muzzle flashes erupting in all directions. Rounds sparked off rocks, creating ricochets that screamed through the darkness. The volume of fire was impressive, disciplined, dangerous. 3 SEAL operators reported near misses, but the cartel fighters were firing at shadows and sound. While while the SEALs possessed thermal imaging that rendered the darkness irrelevant. Team Bravo engaged with M240 machine guns, 7.62mm rounds, fired in controlled bursts that chewed through vehicle metal and human tissue with equal efficiency. The southern ridge became a wall of tracers, every fifth round glowing red as it carved through the night. Cartel fighters attempting to establish defensive positions behind vehicles were cut down mid-movement. Bodies crumpled, blood pooled on desert hardpan. The professional formations dissolved into survival instinct and chaos. 0257, 10 hours. The cartel security chief, demonstrating the tactical acumen that had made him valuable, organized a breakout attempt toward the eastern exit. 15 fighters formed a wedge, laying suppressive fire while sprinting toward the opening. It was a sound decision executed with precision. It would have succeeded against conventional opponents. Team Charlie had been waiting for exactly this maneuver. The blocking position opened fire with devastating effect. M4 carbines equipped with holographic sights and infrared lasers created a lattice of death across the exit corridor. The cartel's breakout element ran into a wall of bullets traveling at 3,000 feet per second. The wedge formation collapsed. Bodies fell in overlapping heaps. The security chief took 3 rounds center mass, his ceramic plate carrier stopping the first 2 but fracturing ribs, the 3rd round finding the gap between plates and severing his subclavian artery. He dropped to his knees, attempted to transmit a final radio message, and pitched forward into the dirt. 02:58 the hours. 4 cartel fighters abandoned their weapons and raised their hands, shouting surrender in Spanish.
Convoy belonged to the Sinaloa
The rules
Cartel.
of engagement did
SEAL
not
Team
permit
6
accommodation.
positions
The
along
mission's
the hills of the
classification
Bolivian
level
terrain.
required
The mission was
total
Operation
operational
Reaper
security.
Scythe, authorized by
3
JSOC.
suppressed
0
rifle
survivors.
shots ended the surrenders.
At 2:51
The bodies were
hours, the
dragged to the
convoy
cargo
engaged
vans
me.
for later disposal.
These were
Intelligence
former
recovery
Mexicans from
teams would
Gates of
process them
Auditory.
for identification,
He understood
fingerprints,
American
and DNA
tactics.
samples
He had prepared
that
his
would be
men.
cross-referenced against
All
cartel
elements,
databases.
stand by.
So too,
Weapons tight
59,
till
30
my
hours. Sporadic gunfire continued from 2 surviving cartel members who had taken cover beneath an overturned land cruiser. Their position was covered from 3 angles, their ammunition finite, their survival time measured in seconds. A SEAL fire team maneuvered to flanking position while another suppressed with precision
hours,
fire.
the trailing
At
Mercedes
03
entered the kill zone
Borough
center
14
point.
hours, a
Every
fragmentation
vehicle
grenade
now
rolled beneath the
occupied the
vehicle.
engagement area.
The explosion was
Trapped between
muffled,
geological
contained by the
formations that
land
funneled
cruiser's
them.
bulk, but effective.
Execute.
Movement ceased.
Copy
03
strike.
01 45 hours. The mission commander
Status
transmitted
report.
across all frequencies.
All systems green.
Cease fire.
Telemetry
Commence
locked.
consolidation and exploitation.
The night
The kill zone
disintegrated
fell
into
silent
violence.
except for the crackle of burning vehicles and the hiss of punctured radiators. Thermal scans confirmed 0 hostile heat signatures still active. The engagement had lasted 5 minutes and 41 seconds. 47 cartel operatives had entered the canyon. 47 were now casualties. SEAL casualties. 0 killed, 0 wounded.
2
One
seconds
minor
later,
ankle
the
strain from a
M19
dismount
grenade
maneuver.
launchers opened fire.
The disparity
The weapon
was not
system
luck.
cycled
It
at
was the
40
product of
rounds per
superior
minute.
intelligence,
The first
overwhelming
Bravo
firepower,
transposed mile
technological
detonating with
advantage,
overpressure
and
waves.
operators whose selection process eliminated 90% of candidates before they ever earned the title. The consolidation phase began with methodical efficiency. 4-man teams swept through the wreckage, confirming kills with double taps, collecting intelligence materials, photographing faces, stripping electronic devices. The cargo vans yielded the expected fentanyl payload, packaged in vacuum-sealed bricks marked with cartel
Wedge
stamps.
formation! Suppressive
Estimated
fire
street
on the
value,
gate!
$17 million.
Push through!
The
Don't
drugs
stop.
were photographed
Don't
for
stop.
intelligence
Reach it,
purposes,
go.
then incinerated with thermite grenades that burned at 4,000
Team Charlie
degrees
unleashed
Fahrenheit,
a devastating
reducing the
barrage from their
narcotics to
M4s.
sterile ash.
The cartel's formation
03
collapsed.
12 hours.
Took 3 rounds,
Intelligence
then
recovery
dropped to his
reached the
knees.
security
He
chief's
attempted
vehicle.
a final radio
His
message
encrypted
and pitched
radio, a
forward.
military-grade SINTGARS system clearly stolen from Mexican armed forces stockpiles, was extracted intact. His smartphone, surprisingly unlocked by facial recognition during the brief period between his wounding and death, contained 847 contacts, including 6 Mexican federal police commanders, 2 state governors' direct lines, and 23 U.S. phone numbers with Arizona and Texas area codes. The device was sealed in a Faraday bag for forensic examination at Fort Meade. The intelligence value exceeded the operational cost by orders of magnitude. Documents recovered from the convoy included detailed route maps for 14 separate smuggling corridors, ledgers documenting payments to 73 Mexican officials, and manifests indicating weekly fentanyl shipments totaling 1,200 kilograms. The information would fuel 40 follow-on operations across 3 countries. The strategic impact of Operation Reaper Scythe would cascade through cartel networks for months, severing supply lines, exposing corrupt officials, and forcing organizational restructuring that would create exploitable vulnerabilities. 03.28 hours, the exfiltration commenced. SEAL teams withdrew to pre-designated extraction points in reverse order of their engagement sequence. Charlie first, then Bravo, finally Alpha, after confirming the kill zone was sanitized. 2 MH-60mm Blackhawks, operating in blacked-out mode with pilots using night vision systems, descended into the canyon at 03:34 hours. Rotor wash scattered ash and debris across the site. 45 operators and their recovered intelligence materials loaded in under 3 minutes. The helicopters lifted, noses dipping forward as they accelerated into the darkness, flying nap-of-the-earth profiles that kept them below radar coverage. At 03:38 hours, the aircraft crossed back into U.S. airspace, landing at a classified forward operating base in southern Arizona at 03:52 hours. The operators offloaded, weapons were cleared and secured, intelligence materials were transferred to waiting analysts, and the after-action review began before dawn broke. The mission from infiltration to exfiltration had consumed 6 hours and 23 minutes. The engagement itself, 341 seconds. The tactical lessons were immediate and unambiguous. Cartel security forces, despite their training and equipment, could not survive contact with Tier 1 Special Operations Forces operating with full intelligence preparation and technological support. The engagement demonstrated the lethality achievable when human expertise merged with surveillance assets, precision weapons, and total battlespace awareness. The cartel's professional formations, which would have overwhelmed Mexican military units, were insufficient against operators who trained 250 days per year for exactly these contingencies. The strategic ramifications cascaded through multiple domains. Mexican authorities, notified of the operation only after its completion through pre-arranged diplomatic channels, issued a formal protest citing sovereignty violations. The protest was ceremonial, required by domestic political considerations, but undermined by the Mexican government's obvious inability to interdict the targeted convoy themselves. Back-channel communications indicated Mexican intelligence services were grateful for the elimination of a cartel element that had penetrated their own security apparatus. The recovered evidence of corruption would enable internal purges that Mexican officials could not have executed without American-provided proof. The cartel's response evolved over the following 72 hours. Initial confusion about the convoy's fate, whether it represented betrayal, rival cartel action, or Mexican military operation, gave way to horrified recognition when surveillance drones and clandestine sensors detected American Special Operations Forces. The realization that U.S. operators were conducting direct action missions on Mexican soil fundamentally altered cartel strategic calculations. Smuggling routes were immediately revised. Security protocols were overhauled. High-value targets began avoiding ground transportation entirely, shifting to small aircraft and scattered convoys that were harder to target but also less efficient and more expensive to operate. The deterrent effect manifested in measurable metrics. Fentanyl seizures at Arizona border crossings declined 34% in the subsequent month, not because enforcement improved, but because supply chains were disrupted. Cartel violence in Sinaloa State surged as internal recriminations over security failures sparked factional fighting. 3 cartel commanders connected to the convoy's planning were executed by their own organization. The operational security breach that allowed American intelligence to penetrate the convoy's route planning was never identified, fostering paranoia that further degraded cartel effectiveness. The operation also transmitted strategic messaging to state actors who enabled or tolerated cartel operations. The precision of the intelligence, the lethality of the execution, and the zero-casualty outcome demonstrated capabilities that could be applied not just against criminal organizations, but against any hostile force. The message was unsubtle. American Special Operations Forces would operate wherever U.S. security interests were threatened, regardless of borders, and the outcomes would be one-sided. For governments considering whether to cooperate with American counter-narcotics efforts or maintain ambiguous positions, Operation Reaper Scythe provided a case study in consequences. The recovered intelligence fueled operations across 2 continents. The phone numbers extracted from the security chief's device led to the arrest of 8 corrupt officials, the exposure of 3 money laundering networks processing $200 million annually, and the identification of cartel safe houses in Phoenix, Tucson, and El Paso. Follow-on raids netted 14 additional arrests, 600 kilograms of narcotics, and $3.4 million in cash. The operational tempo increased, each success generating intelligence that enabled the next operation, creating a cascading effect that degraded cartel capabilities faster than they could regenerate. 45 operators entered a canyon in the Mexican desert with orders to eliminate a high-value target and interdict a narcotics shipment. They accomplished both objectives in under 6 minutes, suffered 0 casualties, and extracted intelligence that generated strategic effects for months afterward. The The engagement demonstrated doctrinal principles proven across decades of special operations. Superior intelligence enables overwhelming tactical advantage, technological dominance multiplies human expertise, and precision violence achieves objectives that diplomacy and deterrence cannot. 38 minutes after the first shot was fired, the canyon was empty, the convoy reduced to burning metal and ash. The operators were already across the border, the intelligence was being processed, and the strategic ramifications were beginning their cascade through cartel networks and governmental calculations. The desert dawn revealed only wreckage and silence. The operational details would remain classified for decades, but the message had been transmitted with absolute clarity. There are no safe havens, no untouchable targets, no operational security sufficient to protect those who threaten American lives. The rules of engagement had been rewritten not through policy statements or diplomatic notes, but through demonstrated capability applied with surgical precision and overwhelming force.